Hey there, Saints. Pastor Dave here with another Advent devotion for you this Wednesday. Hope you're doing well today. I'm going to share another reading from Quinn Caldwell's All I Really Want. And in this reading, Quinn talks about miracles. You might know this story. After Jesus' death, this guy Saul is going around persecuting Jesus' followers. Then in Acts 9, he's on his way to Damascus when he's blinded by a great light and he hears the voice of God basically telling him to cut it out. Afterwards, he becomes Paul, one of Jesus' biggest fans. The Wikipedia article about Saul's conversion includes a researcher's claim that the experience sounded like an attack of temporal lobe epilepsy, perhaps ending in a convulsion, which was startling and dramatic. The blindness which followed may have been post-ictal. Some people have too much time on their hands. Like those people who spend all their time trying to explain the 10 plagues in Egypt or the parting of the Red Sea in terms of bacteria and windstorms. I mean, who cares if the event was scientifically explainable or something supernatural? Would it really be a surprise to learn that God can turn even earthquakes and epilepsy to good ends? As if something with a scientific explanation can't also be an act of grace. So many of the stories that go with this time of year are miraculous. Virgin births, angelic appearances, psychic dreams, and traveling stars. You might be tempted to try to explain them rationally. Get over it. Miracle stories aren't supposed to be explainable. Or, more to the point, they don't need to be explained. The right questions for a miracle, especially a miracle in Advent, don't start with how and whether. They start with why. And more important, so what? Don't look for explanation. Look for meaning. Don't look for data. Look for symbol. Don't look for facts. Look for truth. God, I know you gave me a brain because you want me to use it. And I'll think super critically about all these stories in January, I promise. But for now, help me get so lost in the miracles that I find my way to you. Amen. Saints, on this fourth week of Advent, we typically light the candle for love. And love is a miracle, isn't it? Love is another example of those things that we don't really have a great scientific explanation for. That we can't quantify or measure or fully explain. You know, we can't tell people why I love you, how much I love you, what it really feels like when I say I love you. We just can't put that in terms of the scientific method. Nevertheless, we believe in love. We accept the reality of love. We know love exists. We know that we feel love toward others and they feel love toward us. Love is miraculous in that way. Love inspires us to do things that no other force in the world can. And yet we can't fully explain it. I guess it comes down to what you define a miracle as. Is a miracle something that you can't explain and therefore must be supernatural, must be God? Or is a miracle something that God has done whether or not we get it? I had a professor in a philosophy class in college who talked about epistemological space, which was fancy philosopher speak for the idea of how we know what we know. And his concept was that, well, we used to have religious explanations for lots of things that happened in the natural world because we didn't understand them scientifically. But once the scientific method came along and we started being able to describe natural processes like life cycle and rain cycle and tides and seasons and all that kind of stuff, well, we didn't ascribe those things to the gods anymore. We didn't depend on the divine to explain the things that we couldn't explain. And therefore, the epistemological space for God has gotten smaller because science has gotten bigger. And to that I responded, I don't know that they're really in conflict in that way. I don't think that just because we have a scientific, rational explanation for something, that disqualifies God from having a role in it. And love, I think, is a perfect example. There are other examples of things I just talked about, the natural order of creation, that just because we can explain it and describe it and study it doesn't mean that God didn't do it. The fact that the The gravitational constant is constant. The fact that the speed of light is always what it is. The fact that the tides and the seasons consistently work the way they do. The fact that there is order instead of chaos. Well, that's a God thing, isn't it? Even if we can describe it and study it and understand it to some degree, doesn't mean God didn't do it. I think that the miracle stories that we hear throughout the Gospels for this Christmas season, they may or may not be things that we can, scientifically accept. They may or may not be things that we can, put some kind of rational explanation to. But as Quinn says, that's just not the point, is it? Whether or not we understand them, they're the things that God is doing. And what's important for us to understand, or the important question for us to ask, is why? What does it mean? How does it change the way that we live? So, saints, I want you to focus on those kinds of questions when you notice the miracle stories that we're hearing throughout Advent and Christmas. What does it mean for you that God would act in that way? That's your devotion this week. Hope it's something worth thinking about. I hope it's helpful. I hope you're doing well and staying healthy. I'll be praying for you, saints. Please keep praying for me. And I will see you all again soon. Merry Christmas.